The problematic prince. Erna opened her eyes to the dazzling sunlight. She stared blankly at the golden motes of dust dancing in the air, and when the memory of the moment she had fallen asleep, she clutched the blanket closer to herself. A soft roll of laughter from beside her drew her attention to Bjorn, her husband. He was sitting at the head of the bed looking down at her. His tousled hair shone like thin threads of gold, and so did his face, which still had the lingering smile. She grabbed the feather pillow and looked up at her husband. Bjorn was not very diligent, but he was very thorough in his responsibilities as a husband. Even if she begged because she could not go on, he would not stop until his greed was satisfied. Erna genuinely couldn't recall what happened at the end of the last time. Erna wished she had learned from Mrs. Peg. She brooded over her poor choice of teacher, but the regret was pointless. She made her choice and had to stick with it. She looked up at the clock and it told her that most of the day was done already. She regretted that she had missed the dolphins. The sea they were in must be long gone by now. She felt like she will be spending the rest of the day in bed. Is it much longer to Lars? Embarrassed by the silence in the room, she mustered up the courage to speak. Bjorn closed the book he was reading and snuggled down next to Erna, resting his head on an arm. About 3 days, he said. We started here and moved all the way down to here. He moved a hand to the hem of the blanket and pulled it down. We are here now. His long index finger started to travel down to her chest and made a few little circles. Just a little further, and we will dock in Lars. His finger continued its journey south. Then we get on another boat. Stop. It's okay if we don't talk anymore, Erna said, grabbing his hand as he reached her navel. Bjorn stared at her as if he didn't understand what she was saying, but remained relatively carefree. But you were curious, Bjorn said. You don't have to explain it this way, Erna said. Why? Bjorn smiled leisurely, as if he didn't care about his wife's input. I like this map. Just as Erna was lost with what to say, a knock came at the door, and she felt relief wash over her. Your Highness, the delegation has sent an update to the planned schedule. I know it's rude, but they require you to review it urgently. Fine, Bjorn said after grouping Erna briefly. Come in. Bjorn sat up. He was wearing a loose nightgown. Erna was completely naked. The door opened and Erna hurriedly pulled the blankets over her. She could have fainted from embarrassment. Bjorn accepted the report as if nothing was amiss. Would you like some tea? Bjorn asked casually. I hate you, Erna said, her eyes speaking fire. Hate what? Bjorn asked as he left the documents brought by the maid. Someone entering the room while I'm... Erna, everyone knows what we're doing here. Would you like tea together? He turned from the door and asked, before he went through. Yes, Erna said like a pouting child about to throw a tantrum. Just give me a minute to get dressed. Fine, I'll wait for my quiet wife, Bjorn said, sarcastically. Before entering the solarium, where tea had been prepared, Erna tidied away all her clothes. It took her a little while longer to find a dress she liked, and thanks to Lisa's deft skills, her hair was in a perfect little braid. Bjorn looked up from the report he was reading and a smile beamed at her. He pointed to the chair opposite him and went back to examining the papers. Erna sat and pressed out the ruffles of her dress as a maid slipped in from the edge of the room and poured her tea. She smelled faintly of bergamot. It was the scent that reminded Erna of Bjorn. These came for you, Your Highness, the maid said as she set a small tray of letters on the edge of the tea table. They need replies as soon as you can. Watching Bjorn play the role of Grand Duke made Erna excited to play her role of the Grand Duchess. She was eager to show her princely side. Yes, I will review them, thank you. Erna smiled. She didn't have Mrs. Fitz to hold her hand and provide experienced guidance, so she would have to handle this in bites on her own. Mrs. Fitz had told her, before they left on the cruise, that if Erna had any doubts, she should turn to the eldest maid, Karen. Karen was the maid that served her tea and presented her with the invites. If Erna had left it to her, their marriage would be over by the time they finished the cruise. She had overheard the maid talk about how she wanted Erna's marriage to be over before they had kids, so that it would be easier for Bjorn to get back with Gladys. Erna went through the invites with straight back and high neck, as if rising above the gossip the maids liked to wallow in. She felt Bjorn look at her from time to time, and she wanted to present herself as dignified and regal. She was the Grand Duchess after all. It was hopeless, though. Erna couldn't figure out which invites to accept and which ones to reject. She recognized a few names that sided with Gladys, but there was four she couldn't not recall memories of. Bjorn. Erna cautiously called over the tea table, adjusting the ribbon in her hair. Yes. His gaze briefly passed over her. She felt hesitant in talking any further, like she was only being a nuisance, but she had committed now and he was waiting. Do you know the Hawkins? No. That ruled Hawkins out and both subsequent names. What about the Foresters? Yes. He sounded distant as he flipped the papers. Is it someone we want a relationship with? A pause, yes. Erna took up the pen with excitement. Bjorn was still fully engrossed in his paperwork and was still when Erna finished her responses to the invites. She was a little disappointed, but she knew this trip was more than just a honeymoon. She had to maintain self-control so that she didn't come off as some needy child with no discipline. She must remain calm and graceful, like a lady, in every situation. While reflecting on her grandmother's teachings, Bjorn had finished going through the paperwork and looked up at Erna. The atmosphere around the tea table became more intimate when the maid left with Erna's replies and Bjorn's signed documents. Your handwriting is so wonderful, Erna said, fiddling with a teacup. You have big, pretty hands. Erna couldn't make eye contact because of how shy she suddenly felt. Bjorn was looking at Erna. His expression seemed to say, "What kind of pointless conversation are you trying to drag me into?" But he laughed. You look pretty too, especially in the rain, he said. And especially with that ribbon you keep fiddling with. This? Thank you, she said. The ribbon in question had grown nearly to twice its original size because Erna kept pulling at it at every opportunity. Bjorn had been trying to tease Erna a little, but her smile was genuine and warm. Erna spoke about the people she met on deck, a joke she had heard from the maids, even about the dinner menu. Her stories might not have been poetic, but her voice, mixed with the sweet smells of the tea, turned the afternoon into something leisurely. Bjorn decided against going to bed and instead watched his wife. She was like a little songbird chirping away. He appreciated her voice, the eyes that reveled in shy excitement, and her delicate hands still playing with the ribbon, which was as red as her rosy cheeks. Bjorn. Erna cautiously called his name. Bjorn simply nodded, lost in her wide blue eyes that took him in. When he smiled, Erna blushed furiously, and she smiled back at him with pure admiration. When he saw he had caused her to blush and smile in such a cute way, he realized something. This woman, it's her. He loved everything about her. The noble ladies watched as the Grand Duchess of Lichen glided into the Viscountess Forester's tea party. They looked at each other in amazement. Oh my God, she actually showed up. They whispered to each other. Sending the invite had been nothing but a provocative prank. The Viscountess, who had sent the invite, wanted to remind the country bumpkin that Princess Gladys still existed, and she had their full support. No one thought the Grand Duchess would attend a tea party held by a close relative of Bjorn's first wife. While the guests whispered to each other behind their fans, Erna Dniester glided into the room wearing a long, beautiful gown and hat stuffed with ostrich feathers. Who would have thought the second wife of Bjorn would come out looking so beautiful and elegant? Not at all like the vulgar woman rumors pictured her to be. Does she often pretend to be a lady? It seems the prince is showering his wife with expensive gifts. I wonder how long that will go on for. I guess she really doesn't know. Viscountess Forester said. Gladys looked at Erna with pity, mixed with a strange sense of humiliation. It will be Bjorn who will be embarrassed because his wife doesn't know the familial ties. Gladys had been at the tea party for a while now and was starting to feel the heat. Sorry, it was just supposed to be a little prank. No, it's fine, I don't mind. Gladys said and slowly rose from her seat to approach the Grand Duchess. Erna's disgrace was also Bjorn's. She couldn't just sit by and do nothing. Welcome, Your Highness, Grand Duchess. I was hoping I would get to see you at least once. A bright smile appeared on Gladys' face, as if she could bring herself to actually welcome the unwanted woman from the bottom of her heart. They sat together and tea was presented to Erna. The noble woman started to chat amongst themselves, as if carrying on a conversation from earlier. How is Count Lehman? He has been entombed for a long time. One lady was saying in a tone louder than was necessary. He should be healthy enough soon. Though I am worried because he is so old now. Another replied, I don't think there is need to worry. I hear he was looking for a third wife not too long ago. Oh, really? The corners of Viscountess Forester's mouth twitched slightly as she did her best to not laugh. While enjoying the fragrant tea, the spiteful chatter continued. From Count Lehman to the troubled child of the Heinz family, graceful cynicism lingered in their voices as they diligently mentioned names they would never normally care about. Erna simply raised the lukewarm cup of tea to her lips and sipped. Only now was her thoughts organized. The Viscountess Forester was a maternal relative of Princess Gladys, and it would appear the two are very close. The invite that had been sent to her was never meant as an expression of goodwill. She had gleefully replied and made a fool of herself by coming, all because she relied on a single answer from her husband. She couldn't turn away from them now. It would only open her up to more ridicule. She would have to endure this cushion of thorns. Her Highness, the Grand Duchess, is not very talkative, Gladys said. Erna placed down the cup of tea she had barely taken a sip of. Even thought she didn't give any sign of a special order. The other ladies stopped talking. Are you bored of the tea party? Gladys casually moved to sit next to Erna. No, it's just unfamiliar. Ah yes, that's right. You said you were from the country. Gladys smiled as if to say she understood. Still, you have good taste. The hat is very pretty. It suits you well. Oh, well, thank you. I think you should cut down on the decorations a bit. Bjorn's taste is more simple and elegant. You need to take good care of him. Gladys faced Erna, who was blushing, kept her neck straight. It might have been because of her small stature or her appearance, but she looked like a young girl rather than a mature woman. The authoritative air of a princess of a country was now where to be found. From our divorce to our lost child, he has many wounds. So, Grand Duchess, please take good care of him. Gladys looked almost regal in the bright light of the mid-morning sun. She was like a beautiful saint from an old painting. Her platinum blonde hair, which was like Bjorn's, and her arrogant yet graceful smile overwhelmed Erna, who felt shabby sat next to her. And if I could give you one last piece of advice, Gladys said, holding up her teacup. Be careful not to make this mistake in the future. We will be in Lars soon, so you can't be so carefree. Today, fortunately, I was here to get you out of trouble, but it won't always be possible. Gladys stood up and looked down at Erna. She only had to endure that stare, but she couldn't find the words to say. Gladys politely said goodbye and moved away. Have a pleasant honeymoon, Grand Duchess, Gladys said as she went. The tea party ended ahead of schedule as Gladys complained of a headache and left. Erna didn't notice, but Gladys glared at her as she left. like Erna was responsible for ruining the party. Erna stumbled down the narrow corridors and cursed the open ocean, where she could only see the vast, flat horizon wherever she looked. She bumped into Bjorn and the delegation as she entered the first-class cabins. He turned and looked at her. They all did. She could feel their judgment. "Did you enjoy the tea party?" Bjorn asked. "Yes, it was the Viscountess Forester's tea party." "Forester?" Bjorn questioned. "There's no way you didn't know," Erna thought. Erna's eyes went stern. Her resentment toward her husband for sending her that awful tea party with those awful people transformed into bewilderment. "You heard me clearly and you answered." Her shock was absolute. "Erna." Bjorn said her name as if sighing and stepped closer to her. His eyes were on hers and he bowed his head deeply. It no longer contained warmth. "Before accepting the invitations, you should really speak to Karen first." It was a soft tone, but she could still catch the thorns laced within the words. It was scolding. Erna parted her lips in a moment of sadness and resentment, but she could not readily refute him. She was reminded of Bjorn, how he had been so nonchalant, but Erna had been so enraptured by their time together. He looked at her with kind eyes, like she was her lover. It was so exciting for her, especially when their eyes met across the table. She felt so pretty when those moments came. She didn't know how many times she had adjusted and fiddled with her bow, but he didn't. Realizing that made Erna's heart sting. To him, with his wife sat opposite him, Bjorn was completely indifferent, to the point where he slipped into the room and threw out an answer to a question he did not hear. "Yes," Erna said, not being able to find the courage to confront him. She could not call him out in front of the delegation. He was their prince first and his wife second. They looked to him for leadership, and despite it being their honeymoon, she could not discredit her husband in front of everyone. "I'm sorry, Bjorn. I will be more careful in future." Erna held her trembling hands together as she apologized quietly. Only then did Bjorn give her a smile. It was a mix of a laugh of embarrassment and pity, much like what Gladys had done earlier. "Your Highness," the minister, who had been watching them, urged with polite impatience. Bjorn nodded his head and straightened. "Go and get some rest. I'll be back for dinner," he whispered affectionately, like her lover again, and then turned back to the envoy. Erna couldn't move, frozen to the spot until her husband disappeared round the corner.